Welcome back. Tonight we're going to take a look at Arthur C. Clarke's The Fountains of Paradise. When this book came out, it won the Hugo in 1980 and the Nebula in 1979. Now, Arthur C. Clarke probably needs little introduction. He was one of the big three alongside Asimov and Heinlein during that golden age of science fiction. But it's also important to remember that Arthur C. Clarke also served the military. He was part of the Royal Air Force during World War II. And when leaving the Air Force, he achieved a mathematics and a physics degree as well. So it's really no surprise that what is written here is a hard science fiction novel. But it's a bit different to some of his other works, where he does have some elements of Sri Lankan history here, which is really wonderful. So it's a bit of a deviation to what you probably expect from Arthur C. Clarke if you're not familiar with his full body of works. Now, one of the things I really enjoy about Arthur C. Clarke is that he's one of the few hard science fiction authors out there that, for me, build these realistic worlds that are so believable. Like, you can almost imagine that Arthur C. Clarke has had a glimpse into the future and he's just documenting what he's seen. I mean, it is really, I always find that, it's not a far stretch, and potentially in 100, 200, maybe 50 years even, some of the things that he talked to in this novel and other novels may come to actual fruition. And that is not impossible for me to say, because one of his books, a non-science fiction book in exploration of space, was actually used to persuade John F. Kennedy into starting the race to the moon, right? So he's written a lot of non-science fiction books as well, dealing with the, space travel. So highly decorated author. So the book is really written in two parts. One dealing with the King Kaladas, who lived 1,000 years prior to Van Morgan, and the other following Van Morgan's actual desire to build basically what would be a space elevator to the stars. And I'll explain what that is in a little bit. And that's really one of the areas in the book that sort of differs, because Arthur C. Clarke lived in British Ceylon, or Sri Lanka as it is called today, and he's really taken that view of, Sri Lankan history and brought that into a science fiction setting, and he's blended these, historical events with the new futuristic events, which I think was a really nice blend from Arthur C. Clarke, and not one that you often see in his novels. So it's got a wonderful sense of mystery and history as well, and it makes you want to really get immersed into the Sri Lankan history. So Arthur C. Clarke has taken some liberties with what is the world building in this book. So he's made up this fictional city called Trapobane, which he said himself in the beginning of the book in little extracts, that Trapobane was 80 to 90% Sri Lanka. And the reason he's done that is because he's moved it closer to the equator and also made the highest mountain peak a little bit higher to fulfill the vision that he had in this story. So it takes place in Trapobane, and what we find is that Van Morgan goes to see some of the monks who live on the mountain, and he's come with them with a proposition, because he's got this material in his hand. It's this basically invisible piece of string, which is basically one atom, one carbon atom, that is stronger than metal. It's like completely indestructible, and can, withstand tons of pressure and force upon itself. So he's come to the monks who live on this mountain in Trapobane with the view that, hey, we want to build this space elevator that will help us get to the stars. Now, the reason he's done that is because there are certain mathematical things that he sort of talks to into the book, and there's only really two locations where the site will be feasible. One is in the Pacific Ocean somewhere, and just the logistics of building this elevator in the middle of the ocean has been prohibitive, not to mention the fact that we didn't have the height requirements that was required there. And the other was Trapobane, and the mountain on top of Trapobane, where King Kaladas built his original Fountains of Paradise. So he's got this proposition and he wants to build this space elevator to the stars. But the problem is that it's going to cost a lot of money. So he's trying to find a whole lot of investors to help him fund the work. which sort of gets him into a bit of strife with the organization that hired him in what was it called, the Terrestrial TCC, the Terrestrial Council or Construction or something like that. So he's gotten himself into a bit of hot water with those guys trying to find the funding, and he's also going against, you know, a pretty strong religious order who consider the land sacred. So it's got to overcome their religious beliefs in order to be able to build there, and it tries to persuade them and also deal with the technological challenges in building a satellite, which I think, what was it, 80,000 kilometers it goes into until the first base is built there, which then goes on to the extreme satellites. So he's having all these challenges bringing this idea of a space elevator to fruition, and he's not getting much joy with the monks on Mount Trepanbane. So he actually goes to Mars. There's a colony on Mars, and he tries to convince those guys to build the space shuttle there as well. But a whole lot of different pretty interesting events occur, and he goes through with his plans to build this elevator. So the other part of the book deals with the first alien contact, in this thing called the star glider that actually comes into Earth's orbit and then departs. Now, I'll talk to the star glider a little bit more when I talk about my views on, you know, the likes and dislikes. But that was also one of the middle sections of the novel where it talks to this first contact. And that was very alike to Rendezvous with Rama, very similar kind of concept. So yeah, so Van Morgan, he's got to reconcile some of these religious beliefs, find the funding, overcome these huge technical challenges, and throw himself in the middle of a rescue mission, all with some failing health. So look, I found it a very interesting novel. I just absolutely loved the idea of the space elevator, and it's something that I can really see as feasible, and I think that his mathematics and physics degree really helps in building that sense of reality to what you get with the space elevator. But I also love the fact that, you know, it's not, like, I can understand someone writing mathematics, you know, someone with a mathematics and physics degree writing a hard science fiction novel that would absolutely confuse you and lose you in the maths and the physics of the novel. But what I really always admired about Arthur C. Clarke is that he really knows how to dumb down important ideas and concepts to a point where they still sound believable. He gives you just enough context and just enough information to form an opinion on what this space elevator may be. And he builds a plot around it where it does seem believable. And some of the challenges that he comes across, I've seen in my own personal experience in a working and professional environment, when you're dealing with, you know, multiple different stakeholders who have different opinions, conflicting ideas and conflicting drivers at the same time, and how do you manage all of those? And then you go to a pilot kind of system, and then you have to deal with all the consequences and all the naysayers saying, no, this is never going to work the way you think it's going to work. So he brings that reality to it, which I thought was really, really well done. One of the things I really did enjoy about it as well is the account of King Khalid, or whatever it was, the guy that lived 1,000 years prior. I remember just sitting there thinking, this is good writing. I'm actually really enjoying this storyline. I'm really enjoying the concept, and I really enjoyed the way he tied those historical events to this futuristic sort of position that he's in at the moment, building the elevator, and how the two intermarried, and how that ultimately helped bridge the gaps with the monks sitting atop of Mount Trepanbane. So another thing I enjoyed in the book, and thanks Arthur C. Clarke for giving my hometown a bit of a shout out in Sydney, Australia. So it was good to see Sydney mentioned a couple of times in the novel. You don't often see that in science fiction settings, in most settings, to be honest, when it comes to, you know, British and American novels. So it was good to see that bit of an Australian plug in there. One of the things that sort of puzzled me and got me a bit confused was the actual first contact story in the star glider coming to Earth, or coming into Earth's orbit. Now, what I liked about it is that, you know, if aliens do exist and if there really is life out there, our first contact will most likely be in the form of some kind of exploratory probe that has been sent out into space, that has been beaming data back to their home planet. I mean, we've done that with our own, Earthling Voyager that's out there, traveling through space. So I did sort of, enjoy that, and I thought, yeah, look, that's the most likely way, if aliens did exist, that we would be in contact with them. But I also thought weird. It almost felt like, hey, I'm just going to throw this in there for a bit of an intermission and give you guys a bit of a break from the space elevator. Because for me, I don't know, these aliens sort of came in, they gave us a little bit of information, and then they're out. And I would just remember sitting there thinking, what was the point of these alien creatures? I mean, it really had no bearing to the plot at all. And it also came up with some pretty far-fetched conclusions on what that actual first contact resulted on as far as religion on the planet post that incident. So look, I just found it a bit, I don't know, you haven't given me enough context to make your conclusions plausible. And yeah, I just found it like a bit of an intermission almost, and not quite understanding what the point was. There is a bit of a suffix at the end of the book that talks to that a little bit. But yeah, I think during the whole narrative, it was a bit of a hit and miss for me. I didn't quite enjoy that bit of the novel. Having said that, though, it did remind me of, Rendezvous with Rama, which we will be reviewing on this channel again, because it's going to be on the board as well. It did have those glimpses of what made Rendezvous with Rama great. I just don't see why it needed to be in this novel. So I read this book back in 2005, and the thing that stuck with me throughout all those years is the concept of the space elevator. It's never gone away. It's something that I remember, and I don't think I will ever forget. But having said that, I really did enjoy the Sri Lankan history story, the elements in the book. But unfortunately, when I first started reading the book, I was sort of thinking, hang on, I don't remember this King Khalida, or whatever his name was, or how and what these monks have got to do with the storyline at all. So that part, as much as I really enjoyed it, I really didn't commit to memory at all. But the theme of the space elevator definitely stuck. Which is sort of interesting, because this time round I actually enjoyed reading those narratives, around the Sri Lankan king and how he built this, the fountains and this temple on the top of the mountain. I really did enjoy that part of the story. So who would I recommend The Fountains of Paradise to? I think if you're a fan of the big three, Asimov, Heinlein and Clarke, then this is a great novel. It's probably one of Arthur C. Clarke's better works, especially one of his better later works. I would definitely say that. It's a very interesting novel. I really enjoyed it. And also, if you've read Rendezvous with Rama, there is elements of Rendezvous with Rama here with their first alien contact. So I think that if you are a fan of Rendezvous with Rama, you will enjoy the novel as well. The other recommendation, which I don't make lightly normally, I don't normally tend to recommend hard science fiction novels to new sci-fi readers, because like I mentioned in the past, I think sometimes those hard sci-fi novels are a bit hard to swallow for the novice sci-fi reader, but this is an exception. I wouldn't hesitate recommending this to someone who likes science fiction, who maybe has a scientific background or a technological background, who's open to, hey, yeah, I've got appetite for hard science fiction. What would you recommend? Oddly enough, this is one that I would recommend to new science fiction readers as well. I think it's got that nice blend of the Sri Lankan history, the elevator, and the hard science that went into that, and in what, Arthur C. Clarke, for me, built a very, probable, engineering feat in the Fountains of Paradise. Yeah, so look, overall, very enjoyable read. Arthur C. Clarke's The Fountain of Paradise. I'm looking forward to rereading some of his other Hugo and Nebula award-winning novels when we go to rank them on the shed. But today, we're going to do just that in a minute with Rendezvous for Rama. So please stick around and see where this one ends up on the shed ladder. So Fountains of Paradise, and ranking it on a Hugo and Nebula award-winning ladder. These are not getting any easier. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So how about we start with To Your Scattered Bodies Go, and we'll see where we rank them up or down. So I don't think Fountains is going to be better than To Your Scattered Bodies Go. And the main reason I say that is because I don't think that the character in Van Morgan has quite got the depth or the complexity that I really enjoyed into Your Scattered Bodies Go. In some ways, you know, the concept is a strong one as well, though, into Fountains of Paradise. But the concept of the river world and the resurrection account in that novel, I think for me, just gold. So I can't put that above the Scattered Bodies. The Forever War, interesting one with the Forever War. Because in some ways, the Fountains of Paradise was more memorable to me as far as the concept itself goes. But like I've said in the past, that Forever War, I think deals with a lot of different things that are not quite apparent at face value, that I really think speaks volumes when it comes to the Forever War. So I won't put it above that. I can't put it above The Left Hand of Darkness because Ursula's writing is just wonderful. And her characters are wonderful. And it's not that I didn't like the characters in Arthur C. Clarke's The Fountains of Paradise. I thought they weren't as strong, okay? And I think I've got the same criticism when it comes to This Immortal. Conrad Nomikos, it was just a brilliant character. Absolutely loved Conrad in the novel. Interesting, This Immortal, because in some ways the concept of Fountains of Paradise stuck in my mind more so than it did for This Immortal. But this was a really lovely written book. Had similar concepts as well when it talks about, you know, This Immortal talked to Greek mythology. This in some ways, Arthur C. Clarke's Fountains of Paradise talks to Sri Lankan history and mythology almost as well. So I found that, you know, it was quite similar in that respect. So we've got Troopers or Ringworld. Let's go to Ringworld for a moment. Because another thing that really made Ringworld stand out is the concept of the Ringworld. But I've got to say that the Fountains of Paradise, when it comes to concept, Ringworld was this thing that just inspires all. Like I said in my review of Ringworld, where you think, wow, imagine something like this actually existed. What kind of creature, you know, what kind of intellect must they have had? Oh, Jesus, shocker. To build something like Ringworld, where Fountains of Paradise, for me, I'm going to rate it above Ringworld because it really does a great job of making this concept of the space elevator something that is plausible. I can just see it happening, right? So I'm going to say the concept of Fountains is stronger than Ringworld. So it's really, I think, going to sit between Ring and Starship Troopers and This Immortal. Is it going to be better than Starship Troopers? Yeah, I think it's going to be better than Starship Troopers. I enjoy Starship Troopers, but I'm going to rank Fountains of Paradise above Starship Troopers because I just think it's got more to offer when it comes to the sci-fi settings. This, like I said, is, you know, apart from the actual spacesuits that they use, the powered spacesuits, Starship Troopers was really, like I said, it was either strong irony around militarization or very much a propaganda novel. So I'm going to say I'm going to rate Fountains above Starship. I think that's cool. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I think that's where we're going to go. Hey, for some reason that went through my mind a bit better than I was expecting it. But yeah, I think I'm happy with that sits. Hey, thank you for joining me yet again. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time in the shed.